Hey there, and welcome to episode 122 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. My name is Greg Lindberg. On this episode, we are discussing blind hockey, and we have two guests joining us who are extremely involved in the blind hockey community and are also part of the leadership team of a foundation in the blind hockey arena. So let's go ahead now and strap on the gear, pick up our sticks, and get skating into episode 122 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. All right, so here on this episode of the podcast, we have two guests who are highly involved in the blind hockey community. So super excited to hit the ice for this episode. So first, I would like to introduce Josh Schneider. Josh, welcome to Eyes Free Sports.
Oh, it's awesome. Thanks for having me here, man. It's great to promote blind hockey and talk a little bit about blind sports with you.
Awesome, definitely. And then we also have Drew Garza. Drew, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us. Glad to be here. Listened to a few of your episodes, so it's exciting to finally get on here.
Cool. I appreciate that, Drew. I should mention that both of you guys are with the Dented Puck Foundation, which we'll definitely get into. But just want to kind of kick things off with just your personal background so that folks can kind of get to know you guys before we get kind of too deep into the blind hockey discussion. So Josh, let's go ahead and start with you. If you just want to introduce yourself, just talk about your personal background.
Yeah, my name is Josh Schneider. I'm from New Jersey. Like we discussed before, I'm like right in that New York City area. Actually, if I walk probably to the top of my hill, I can see the skyline. I grew up sighted, which is funny. I was actually thinking that as we're talking about the background thing, like I would have never said that. Like that's a word only our community uses. Like who else says sighted hockey or sighted something? But I grew up sighted. I was a regular kid. I played every sport. I wasn't very good at most of them. I was actually somewhat good at hockey. I grew up playing roller hockey. I was a regular kid. I played roller hockey in college and I studied education. I went on to teach and coach for about a decade. And after about 8 or 9 years into my teaching career, it was April of 2012, and I was walking my softball kids out to their late bus, and I walked them out to their late bus, and I walked back into my school building, and I'm rubbing my right eye, and I'm just normally rubbing my right eye, like tired after a day, and I'm looking ahead with my left eye, and I'm looking at the doors to the cafeteria, and part of the door is skew. So this is our math lesson for the day. So a skew line is to the side or parallel to where it should be. You have a line, and then part of it's just not there. It's a little bit to the side of where it should be. So I'm looking at a door frame, and part of the door frame is like an inch or two in the middle of the door. And I'm like, in my head, I am not on drugs. Like nobody could have slipped me anything. I've been teaching all day. This isn't tired. That's not normal. So I cover my left eye. I look at it with my right, and it's normal. I cover it with my right again. I look my left, and it's still skew like that. So I go tell my fiance at the time, and who is not my wife now. So that was red flag number one. Massive sight loss some months before you're met a wedding should really tell you something. But I had never been to the eye doctor my entire life. And I went to her eye doctor probably about 2 weeks later. And it was kind of an immediate turnaround. I don't know if you're in your late 30s or 40s, you're familiar with who the Osbournes are and who Ozzy Osbourne is. And you grew up knowing that there was a TV show. His son, Jack, was diagnosed with MS really, really young at 30 years old, I was 30 at this time. And this had happened, and it was in the news everywhere. And this was right about this time. And I did my first OCT, and the optometrist brings me in, and he goes, hey, I was living down in Philly at this point. He goes, hey, I need you to get an MRI of your brain. And I look at him funny. He goes, and I need you to just go to Will's Eye in Philly. And if you're not familiar with Will's Eye is the eye institute of pretty much the Middle East Coast. And he explains, he's like, I see some inflammation in your optic nerve. And we're told when we see anything with optic nerves, we immediately check for MS. I didn't have MS. I went to see the first time I saw an optic neurologist. And I basically, it was also my first time taking steroids. basically just gave me steroids and sent me on my way. It was a little inflammation in my optic nerve, and that was it. About 6 months later, I was coaching basketball. It all kind of revolves. I was coaching basketball,
Yep.
and I was missing free throws left and right. So it wasn't everything, and something obvious like that one little spot that I noticed. Like my free throws just weren't going in, and things were a little off left, right. Even the kids noticed. And then things got even blurrier. And then same thing, went back to the doctor, got my 80 milligrams of prednisone and cycled that. My third one was the bad one. Third one was in the spring, and I lost most of my left eye and a lot of acuity at that point. Whenever I would lose my vision would close in on me and the acuity would get really bad. And in my eyes now, talking to our community, I was probably in the 2200, 250 range. That was considered bad because, I had good eyesight. But the
Sure.
acuity would clear up, but my visual field would never come back. And I mean, since then I am now in remission for over 3 years, but I had over 10 or 11 separate episodes that we've really never found the causation. We've really never found anything information, but the medications I'm on now are what's preventing everything. So that's basically where I'm at. I am, as international standards and blind hockey standards put it, I'm a B2. So I have no vision, no light perception in my left eye. And I have what we assume is about 3 degrees in my right eye. Basically, at that point, I had made the decision in 2018 to retire from teaching. It was a tough decision, but in the climate of school shootings we're at, that's the one thing I can't do is protect kids from the one thing that we're known for in America. So that was a tough decision. I left teaching, and like any retiree, it's a real big void in your life when you take out a 40-hour plus job out of your life. But the big joke was I literally gave my school doctor's note and never went to school again. Yeah, I know. That night I was at my doctor's, and they're like, "We'll type you up a doctor's note." And I'm like, "To get me out of school for the rest of my life." I was retired for about a year, and I was doing dishes with the local news on. And I mean, retirement's different when you're blind because I wanted to volunteer, but it's really hard to volunteer when you have to pay to get places.
Sure.
So I had the TV on, and for some reason on the local news, like I must have just hit power, and that's what Optimum did automatically when I had Optimum. And I'm doing dishes, and I hear a bunch of disabled people are finding joy in a sport they never thought they could play. I mean, half my career was teaching special ed and coaching. So I just like my ears perked up at this point. I'm doing the dishes. I'm like, that's great. I'm listening. And the next 5 words at New York Metro Blind Hockey. And that's all I remember because it literally, I mean, this was me who a lot of other people had hockey taken away by their vision. I stopped playing hockey before I lost my vision, but it was something that I tried that I knew I couldn't keep up. And I just immediately, just a slow turn. And for my vision, I can see well. Without my glasses, that was white ice and legs moving. Without a doubt, is hockey. I mean, I ran around my house to look at the TV, and immediately I just started sending emails. And that's kind of how I started blind hockey. I mean, my next practice was 2 weeks. The first practice was 2 weeks after that. And I mean, just after I got off the ice, the guy who runs the team, Ted Caputo, came up to me and he's like, "Hey, how was it?" Not understanding that it didn't matter to me. I was back on the ice and I was there for good. He came up to me and he's like, "Hey, how was it?" And all I could muster was, "I don't think you've realized what you've done." And he looked at me funny. I was like, "You created a monster." And he looked at me funny, and he's realized now. But this is what you're talking about is kind of the monster, is all the dented puck stuff. Because a couple of weeks later, I realized that blind hockey was amazing, and I looked at my wife, and I was like, I have to show the hockey community this, because in my eyes, I was never really part of the blind community. I was always part of the hockey community. I'd left for a while, but I always was a hockey player at heart. And to me, the fact that people could do this with their vision was incredible. And I wanted to put it, I'm like, I needed to figure out a way to show people this. And I looked at my wife and I was like, "So what's Instagram about?" Because I was that old Facebook guy. And she's like,
Yep.
"Well, like it's like videos and stuff." I was like, "All right, good. That's what I'm doing." So I still start putting videos on Facebook and start trying to grow awareness. And I see this guy who is he's got a video of him skating, and his name is Blind Hawk, and I was like, that's the guy with blind in his name, and he's playing ice hockey, and that his post is like, first time back on the ice in a really long time, and this is how the relationship started, and me, who this is now referred to as the wounded duck message, which I actually searched for an hour this morning, and Instagram didn't go back this far. But to me, this was an older guy who was getting back on the ice for the first time in a really long time, and I wanted to be encouraging. So I sent a message to this guy, and I was like, "Hey, man, I played for a long time. Like it's been a long time before I got back on the ice too. I was like, you'll be able to do it. I'm here." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I just broke my leg. I've been back on the ice for a while." And that is the wounded duck message. How Drew and I met. But really, and kind of this story goes from there. I knew the second I found out blind hockey existed. I mean, my entire life has been education, people with disabilities in hockey. So, I'm uniquely qualified. But I kind of knew, I had a big void in my life, and it was pretty much right there to fill. And that's kind of the backstory to my background. And I'll kind of give it over to Drew now for his. We can kind of get that early story.
Sure. Yeah. And I just got to say, all my guests, I'm so fascinated how they come upon adaptive sports. And like in your case, just kind of an accidental, you happen to see something on TV washing dishes, and it's like, it was meant to be, right?
But honestly, it shouldn't be that way. And that's why we started the
Right.
foundation, why we do what we did. Like I lost my vision starting in 2012. We're going on in October where we will be celebrating our 10th anniversary of blind hockey in USA. So essentially blind hockey was around for 5 years while I was going to one of the most respected neuro-ophthalmologists in the world in Boston, and we didn't know about it. So one of the goals, and it has to be for more blind sports, is really just for people to understand that it's there and not have this big gap in their life or this big void that can be filled by something that's, so fulfilling and community-based like a sport.
Right, exactly. And obviously that's my main goal with this podcast, try to bring awareness, bring attention, bring the spotlight to all these different blind sports opportunities out there. Let's transition over to Drew. So Drew, if you just want to kind of tell us about your background and your journey.
I also lost my vision later in life. I grew up playing hockey I'm from Chicago, Chicagoland area, just north of it, and grew up playing hockey here, played all through high school, went into beer league afterwards. And when I was 27, kind of like Josh, I was working on a spreadsheet and I noticed that the top right corner kind of bubbled out. And so I went to the ophthalmologist and found out that I had fluid in my retina and diabetic retinopathy, which ended up after a bunch of surgeries taking most of my vision. So I'm in Josh's boat as well, that what I can see pretty well. I just can't see a lot of it. So I have tunnel vision in my right eye, no peripheral. I think that for both of us, I've heard Josh say it before, and I agreed. Our vision for everyday life is adequate. So I never really thought that I was in that blind community. And then one day I was sitting on the sofa, and I think my wife and I were watching hockey, and I was just like, there's got to be blind hockey. There's goalball, there's beat baseball, there's all these adapted sports. And I Googled Chicago blind hockey, and sure enough, there was a Blackhawks blind team. I reached out to them and started practicing. And funnily enough, I was almost an hour late for the first practice. So I only got to skate for about 45 minutes. But when you've grown up in a sport and then it's lost, it's incredible to be able to come back to a community that's drastically different, but also exactly the same. And so that was really good for my mental health to kind of be back in that team dynamic. And especially with all the young kids that are in our programs, it's really cool to be able to, I don't want to say mentor, but help guide, little tips and tricks and things that you learned growing up. It's cool to be able to pass those on to people that didn't have the opportunities that I did when I was growing up. So yeah, that's really my background. I worked retail, so no big dramatic get out of class forever cards, but we all have different paths that lead us to these places, and now we're here.
Right, right. Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that, Drew.
Yeah.
So then in terms of your blind hockey careers, just kind of memorable moments, highlights, experiences you both have had. Let's go back over to Josh if you just want to talk to me about your blind hockey journey.
I mean, mine was ours started with COVID. So, I mean, it really was kind of funny. And I mean, the podcast really kind of what kept the blind hockey going for a while. I mean, I found blind hockey in October 2019. So I got like 3 or 4 practices in one little game, and then we all thought the world was going to end. But a lot of what we I mean, some of the highlights, everything is going so like we're in such a whirlwind now. We've played with some unbelievable people and in some unbelievable places already. I mean, playing for Team USA, we've played on the same ice that the Maple Leafs played on in the original Maple Leafs. It's original. That is like the USA Canada games are at original Maple Leaf Gardens. We were able to play with, and we've played with multiple NHL players. We've played our first pond hockey tournament was in the middle of the Rockies, and I mean, there's only 2 or 3 backdrops I'd rather play hockey at. In the grand scheme of things, when we talk about highlights, we're building something. So a lot of the highlights now are not even going to compare to what's going to be around the corner next year, in 5 years, in 10 years, because we are like our goals are set so high and our awareness is at this point so low that we have so far to go. I mean, my first time playing for Team USA was as someone who grew up watching the Olympics and grew up, I didn't ever have the aspiration to be on Team USA. It wasn't a chance of mine. I was an okay hockey player and a terrible athlete. It's like it wasn't anything. I sat there and watched and cheered, and now I have a chance to represent my country. So like that feeling hits hard every time.
Absolutely. Great point. And then Drew, how about you? Just your time on the ice, the opportunities you've had, anything that really comes to mind and stands out at this point?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot that stands out. This community's given me a lot. These people have given me a lot. I think it's got to be first. It's always going to be first that are kind of your favorites. Like the first time I walked into the locker room, I remember hearing someone talking about running into a door, and I was like, "Hey, I've done that too. I think I did that on the way in." And you feel a sense of commiseration for the issues that you're dealing with that other people in your life may not have had to deal with. I agree with Josh. Getting to put on the red, white, and blue is always an incredible experience. I was very fortunate that my first event was 2019 August in Minnesota. I got to play on this showcase team against a bunch of former pros, local Minnesota, hockey celebrities, I guess I would say, and got to wear the red, white, and blue and number 9, which is growing up, Mike Madonna was my favorite player. And he wore number 9 for USA as well. So it was a cool thing for me to get to do. And then I think that our first event in Chicago, the Windy City Showdown, was it just after COVID?
I wasn't stealing that one from you. I was giving you that one. It was just after COVID. And you know what's funny is going through our Instagram messages, I saw pictures of a logo of the Windy City Showdown in October of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Way before we even thought of it, way before you were that was the first time you're like, hey, if we do a tournament, this is what a logo would look like. The logo didn't look like that. But no. As I was scrolling back, I was like, wow, October 2020. That's when this started. Yeah, it was the first It was the first blind hockey event post COVID. It could have been one of the first national hockey tournaments post COVID. If you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
No,
So we were talking about it for a long time. COVID hit when COVID hit, we had just come out of the Hendrickson Foundation in February, which was also a great time. The Hendricksons do a lot of good stuff for disabled sports in general, but COVID shut, like Josh was saying, COVID shut everything down. And we had a disabled festival that was planned for Pittsburgh that got canceled. Then we had another one that was planned that got postponed. And I reached out to Josh and I was just like, we need to do something. Like, I don't know how, I don't know what, but we need to do something. And so we made the Windy City Showdown, which was at Fifth Third, which is the Blackhawks practice facility. And it brought, gosh, that first one,
70 something.
yeah, I think we had 70 plus players there, two divisions.
Wow.
They played 4 games each, had a practice. Like it was the first time we as a community had been able to get together in a year, maybe a little bit longer than that, a year and a half, for some people, maybe two. And, I think that kind of started us on this path of we know what we want for the community and what we want from the sport, and how do we give that to the community. Since then, we've done another Windy City Showdown. We've done 2 events with New Jersey Devils in Newark. We like it's just gone from there. And so I think that, like, when we talk about highlights, it's like Josh is saying, it's all about the growth and the things that we've been able to accomplish, but it's also, these are just kind of the building blocks for the things that are coming in the future. So, we'll always remember and kind of cherish those first, but I'm getting more excited now for the fifth and sixth of these events, because they're just getting better and bigger. And it's just incredible to see the growth that we've been able to accomplish as a community.
Right, absolutely. And like you guys have both mentioned, just how COVID kind of bogged us down for such a long time there and took a toll. And if we didn't have COVID, how things might be different. But, you guys in the blind hockey community have plodded on, and a lot of great things, I think, to come that have already happened, but a lot more to come as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the hope, at least.
Right, right. So as far as the Dented Puck Foundation, curious, how did that kind of come to fruition? Just the idea, the genesis of the idea, and how that organization currently looks. Whoever wants to take that one first here.
I'll take this one because I brought it up to Josh. But it was kind of kind of what we're talking about with the showdown. It was just, all our events have been canceled. We need to put a showdown. We need to put an event on so we can get the guys back on the ice and make sure that we're keeping everyone together. And then after that, it's like, I want to start a foundation.
It's like we got to start it. We got to start a charity to back this thing. And that was like, honestly, the Dented Puck started as I thought you were going to the podcast route. And the Dented Puck really started as a podcast. And Drew goes on the podcast, and had to have been September 2020, August 2020.
Yeah, on the bench with Beaks.
Went on a podcast from a guy who loves hockey in Colorado. And he texted me, and I'm like, he texted, and I was like, how was he? He goes, dude, we got to start a podcast. And I was like, I've never even listened to a podcast. Never even listened. I mean, and that was kind of the idea, that like it was just our way of growing awareness. And the goal really was to grow awareness within like the sighted hockey community or the general hockey community. And what ended up happening is it ended up being a place where our members of our community can tell their stories. And it really wasn't our intention at any point, but really that's kind of what it ended up being, having conversations with them, just like you do about sports, but us talking about them about kind of their specific stories.
Right.
Yeah. And from the podcast came, from the podcast came
the tournament. Yeah.
Tournament. And then from the tournament and the podcast came the foundation. Our first, I guess, official event because we had already branded as the foundation for the showdown. So that would be our first like official event. There are a lot of organizations out there for a lot of different sports, and there are not very many for blind hockey. So our entire goal has always been just to help promote the sport in any way possible. To that extent, we've done NFB, we've done Abilities Expo events. Josh has done a bunch of vision walks in the New York area. We've talked to local communities, and then we play at charity tournaments to help grow visibility. So it's we've been around for what, 4 years now?
One official. I mean, official, it was a little over 3 years because it was 2021 after it was like a month after we got back from the first pond hockey tournament. So it was like March of 2021. So officially, a little over 3 years.
Yeah. So we're still
Babies.
toddlers. Yeah, we're still toddlers. We're still figuring it out. There's a lot of things we've got very large aspirations. My most recent large aspiration was talking to Josh that I'd like to start a rink somewhere.
Oh, wow.
So, I think that's finding
We've
a
got
home.
very deep pockets, but they're empty.
Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone wants to fill them up, we're here. But I mean, I think you've got to have large aspirations in order to keep pushing forward. So is it going to take 10 years? Is it going to take 20 years? Is it going to happen in my lifetime? I don't know. But putting the seed out there and planting that idea within the community, I think is always a good thing for all of us to push forward for. And so my hope is to have a accessible rink that can be the home for blind hockey in the United States moving forward. That can provide accessible ice, accessible facilities, and just like a place that they know that they're always going to be welcome and able to skate.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. And as far as like locations, do you kind of have any thoughts on where you'd kind of like to see that, or?
I think that we've in the spitballing sessions, you always want to lean towards kind of middle of the country because we do have players on the West Coast that get they have to pay the lion's share of travel and all that stuff. We've got a guy in Seattle that, when he goes to these events, he's paying like $1,400 for airfare. So if we can find a place that's central of the United States, it's easy for everyone to get to, I think that's the big goal. But honestly, I wherever it would fit best, and it may be the East Coast because that's where most of our players end up being located. Nothing concrete yet. Still trying to figure out how to make everything work.
Sure. As far as the Dented Puck name, I'm definitely curious. How did you come up with that name?
Josh, I will give that one to Josh because he is the mastermind behind the name.
Oh yeah, I do names. That's about it. So as a special ed teacher, like our sport is amazing in the sheer fact that all it takes is this one adaptation, and our game is unless you have a very high hockey IQ, you can't tell the difference between our game at its highest level and a regular hockey game. And it all has to do with just the right kind of adaptation. And the puck until 2009, 2010 was many different things being used in Canada. And in 2010, a guy named Mark DeMontis came down from Canada and worked with NC State Engineering to come up with the puck as we know it today. And it will without a doubt not be the last iteration, because for this reason, our pucks are made out of very low grade sheet metal. They're twice the size of a regular hockey puck, which is a regular hockey puck's made out of rubber. In order to make it bigger, it just gets heavier and more dangerous. So our puck is made out of sheet metal, is 5 inches in diameter and 3 inches tall, and has ball bearings inside for sound. So blind hockey is played with our usable vision. So those people that can see it and have good vision, like me and Drew, can see that puck all over the ice. Those people that have lower vision, the ball bearings give it a little bit more of a solid sound so that you can hear it. But unlike the beeper, it's not constant. The puck has to be in motion. When our puck hits the net, the posts on the net are made out of iron. So low grade sheet metal on iron dents all the time. So our pucks, unlike a dollar rubber puck that basically lasts forever, our pucks do not last forever. They turn into what we call cupcakes because a puck that is basically a disc should not be taller than it is wide, and that's what our cupcakes turn into. So we
Right.
were trying to figure out with a good name for the podcast, and that's the other thing I saw, Drew. What the one of the first iterations of the name? Let me go to my gallery because it downloaded the
Hockey in the
picture.
dark.
It was hockey in the dark.
Yeah.
And I downloaded the action and I downloaded it from our name. But I mean it's one of those like, you know, we are hockey players and there's a little bit, you want to read a little bit deeper into it. There's a little bit deeper into meaning and a little bit more of a, synonymous, alliterative meaning to it if you want. But yeah, it was the idea that really is what the difference is in our sport and what our sport is based around. So that's kind of what it is and what it's going to be.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I appreciate the kind of the story behind that. Really interesting. Let's talk about the current state of blind hockey here in the U.S. Obviously, the sport has been around since the 70s, pretty much 50 plus years in Canada. I think you mentioned, Josh, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of blind hockey here in the U.S. this fall. So where do things kind of stand as far as teams geographically? I know there are, a fair amount of teams just around the country. Some have been kind of supported or with the names of NHL clubs. So whoever wants to take that one here first.
We've got teams across the country. A lot of our players are located in the Northeast, in the central area of the United States. We've also got a good amount of teams. The West Coast is a little bit harder, I feel, because they're so spread out, but we do have players there. There is technically teams in Anaheim and Seattle, but we're definitely still growing. It's interesting because a lot of the NHL teams, if they're winning, then they're much more apt to support because the community itself is more kind of excited about the team. So when St. Louis won the Stanley Cup, they really threw a lot of support, and they continue to throw support behind the Blues blind team. But that really helped them get started as a program because the community is really amped about the Blues. Everyone was really excited about hockey, and it was the right time to start it. We have other areas that are more non-traditional hockey. Like when we were at NFB, we ran into people from Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee that just don't have hockey. So for us, it's figuring out how do we get hockey to those places. We also have had a lot of interest in the Florida area, Florida, Utah, Boston, Dallas. Like these areas are just places that it's figuring out the best route to get the players to the rink and on the ice. And I think once we can figure out how to get the players to the rink and on the ice, then that makes it a lot easier for all these programs to really get going. And on that same note, it's finding champions for the sport in those areas because we could go to Boston and help, do a try hockey, help them get a team set up, do all this stuff. But if there's not someone there that really wants it to succeed and move forward, then it's not going to. So it's finding those people as well that are willing to pick up the torch and continue carrying it even after the initial kind of rush of support and all that. So it's a slow burn, and we're doing what we can. We're working with USA Hockey. We're working with the NHL. There's a lot in the works to try and help promote the sport more. We were really lucky this past year that the NHL sent representatives from every team to our annual meetings for USA Hockey, and they, realize now that there is a need and a want. And so, Greg, we met with the Lightning last week, And so
Yeah,
that,
pretty recently.
yeah, so like that's something that's huge. When we were at NFB, I mean, even when we were at Abilities Expos, we'd meet people from Florida, but it's getting how do we connect that NHL with those people? And so that's kind of our struggle right now. And like you were saying, some teams are more supportive in that they lend their name as well as financial support. A lot of teams are financially supportive, but may not necessarily be comfortable letting them use the logo. Like Pittsburgh was the Pittsburgh Rhinos, basically the same jersey as the Penguins wear, but a Rhino logo instead of the Penguins. New York Metro is just New York Metro, but I mean, I feel like that makes more sense because there are so many teams in that area and they're so close together. You got to kind of, I don't know, not pigeonhole yourself into one of them. But we're growing. There's about 300 players in the United States right now. When we were at NFB, we met at least another 50 people that are at least interested. Uh,
Hmm.
and so it's one of those that it's still a very grassroots effort. And I just come back to if you can find a champion in the area, then that's the biggest step. And once you get them, then you just got to support them as best you can. So it's growing. It's growing. We're definitely behind Canada in a lot of aspects, but we'll definitely get there.
Hey,
Yeah.
95% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the US. And then the second part is 70% of Canadians live within 100 miles of Toronto. I think that's the other one. So, I mean, like in the grand scheme
Wow.
of things, we have ours is a surface area issue. We have and we're blind people. We don't travel. So, like, that is our biggest issue is that we are a sport that is based on something that's really expensive. You want to talk every other blind sport. I mean, swimming pools aren't that tough. Pools aren't that tough to get into, but getting onto a basketball court's very easy. Getting onto a field's very easy. Getting onto ice is not easy. And that really, in the grand scheme of things, that is our biggest challenge is finding locations and rinks that really can support this.
Yeah, such a great point. Obviously, in the blind community, we talk a lot about accessibility, in general, but just accessibility, access to ice, like you're saying there, Josh. Definitely more hurdles, more red tape, so to speak, to get past, to get access to that.
And it's all about, I wouldn't say dedication, but motivation. Like I started a team. I'm starting a team in New Jersey this year. One of the biggest reasons is because for an hour and 15-minute practice, it was a 8-hour day for me, and I wasn't the farthest one. This guy down the Jersey Shore was a 10-hour day for. I mean,
Hmm.
but for me, my motivation was I'm going to blind hockey practice, and there was no question I was going every single chance I could. There are people in our community that don't have the motivation and don't have the motivation to spend 8 hours for a night for an hour and a half hockey practice and figuring out ways to combat that and create more opportunities and with like you said within these opportunities figuring out the access for these people. Like I already knew if I was my rink isn't the most accessible, but I'm making sure I get people from the train station. Like that's the big win for everybody. So it we and it's I'm sure you're talking to people in blind soccer too. They have kind of that they're trying to start something really nationally where soccer is an easy sport to get started, but like it's very hard to get those satellites and get them all together.
Exactly. Yep. And just the financial aspect, travel. There's so many factors, especially, when it comes to people with disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, another struggle that we have is that hockey is just an expensive sport in general, from equipment costs to ice costs. So it is trying to find ways to talk to these companies that, have a lot and, trying to get something, discounts, equipment donated, whatever it may be. I feel like that's one of the struggles for our people because not not calling anyone out because it's happened across multiple programs, but we had goalies that were playing in player pants and using player cups, which sounds like whatever, but goalie pants are much more padded. Goalie cups are basically shoulder pads. Like, it's also making sure that all of these guys know what the proper equipment is to be wearing for their position or even just to play. We also had guys that wore blue jeans under their pants. So it's like any sport. There's always going to be hurdles that you have to overcome, and it's finding uh, companies that are interested and willing to support as well. And that's always going to be a struggle because at the end of the day, everyone is still a business and they've got a bottom line that they have to meet.
Right, absolutely. So obviously the Paralympic Games, so this episode is coming out just as the Summer Paralympics in Paris are starting here. But in terms of the Winter Paralympic Games, I know there's been chatter about, could blind hockey someday become part of Paralympic sports and actually have, a spot on the global stage, a blind hockey spot on that truly international global stage, if you will. So any thoughts on that?
Salt Lake City, 34.
We're maybe
That's Josh's goal. This is Drew's reality.
We'll get there. There are a lot of steps involved in becoming a Paralympic sport. You have to have 8 teams internationally. You have to have a World Cup. I think you have to have another event as well, and then you have a exhibition game at a Paralympics where or a board or whatever it is observe, and then they decide from there if it's something that will be added to the Paralympics. Right now, we have national teams in the United States and Canada. We have programs growing in England, Italy, Sweden, Finland, Korea. Gosh, I think I'm missing. I think that there are some programs in Russia, and I feel like I'm missing a few more, but those programs are not at a level that they could produce a national team at this point, whether it's through numbers or ability, whatever, what have you. So it's really how does and Canada, to their credit, has done a lot to help bring hockey to Europe. Their guys, Matt Morrow and Luca DeMontis, have traveled overseas to England, and I believe were they in Russia or were they? I mean,
I think they went to Russia in the beginning. I think they did.
So there's definitely a push to help grow those international programs. But I think that there is definitely a good possibility that we could have our exhibition game by Salt Lake City, because the country that hosts the event has the ability to kind of force an exhibition. So if we can get it really up and running and moving, then feasibly the IOC could do the exhibition game in Salt Lake. I mean, feasibly they could do it in Italy too, because Italy is also interested in blind hockey. So I think there are a lot of paths to get to the Paralympics. As Josh said, I definitely am more of a realist in this, and that I also want to make sure that we can walk before we run.
Sure.
And so my hope is also Salt Lake City, we get our exhibition game, but if it takes a little longer, I'm not going to be upset about it. I just want to make sure that we're doing it right and that all countries and all players are at a level that this is good for the sport. So that's my thought on it.
Hey, I'm not. I say there's nothing against sled hockey, but it's USA Canada, then nobody.
No, and and we were really lucky. The World Para Championships, which is sled, was held in Calgary this past October. Man,
No. It was in May.
May, that's right. And and Canadian Blind Hockey was able to work with those guys to get 2 exhibition games of blind hockey during the World Paras. So they took however many Canadians, like 15 to 16, and then there were 7 to 8 Americans, and we went and played 2 games, and that's where we got a lot of interest from. Slovakia.
Yeah, Slovakia and Czechia, because those are your hockey playing country. Well,
South
so
Korea apparently has a huge blind skating population already. And so it's continuing to get the more visibility on that world stage is definitely helping us. Um,
one of the things that came out and what how Drew's talking. So a little bit of information about sled hockey for those, because this is a blind sports podcast. Sled hockey is for people with lower limb differences. They play literally sitting in the sled with a hockey blade, with a hockey skate blade attached, and they propel themselves with one little hockey stick on each hand, and there's an ice pick on the back of the hockey stick. So they have the hockey stick in each hand, and on the back of the hockey stick, they propel themselves. So we were up there because the top 8 sled hockey teams in the world were there, and we wanted to show them what blind hockey is. One of the biggest things that come out of this, and this is why I'm the big push for Salt Lake City 34, is that Italy was very interested, and Italy also has the ability to push for our exhibition game in Milan. So if we can get our pieces together by Milan to get that exhibition game, that really sets the table for us a possibility for a full slate in 34. But like Drew said, it's so fluid and so many different things, and it takes one NHL player from each country to really support it. And although Drew's a big Dallas Stars fan and is waiting for his Dallas Stars to help him, one of his players from Finland, fully supported their national team already. So it really is getting the awareness out there, getting the support, because that's how we're going to get these countries to really help.
True. Great points. And like we talked about earlier, just kind of the support of USA Hockey, the NHL. It can't hurt to have an NHL club's name on a blind hockey program, obviously. I wouldn't think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about the Lightning. Like, think about our situation with the Lightning. We know they're going to be doing something, and for youth, and adults. Like, I know for me, finding out that it was Chicago Blackhawks blind hockey team, that was a huge thing for me. We got to wear the Blackhawks jersey, the crest. So it's a big draw for everyone. So if you can have the Tampa Bay Lightning blind hockey team, I feel like that's going to pull in a lot more people than it would be if it's just Florida blind hockey. And it's just name notoriety at that point,
Exactly. Yep.
Here I was thinking of a blind hockey team for Lightning name, and I came up with a Carolina one. We just got to have to do with something like Eye of the Storm. But yeah, I got one for Carolina. I'll think of one for Tampa.
Yep. Keep thinking, Josh. We need it.
I still stand by Tampa Bay Lightning blind hockey would be perfect. Put you guys in the same jersey. You guys look good.
Oh, yeah. Would be amazing. Yep. All right. So then before we wrap up here, I wanted to give both of you guys a chance just to share any kind of resources, information, as far as your website, if anyone is interested in learning more about blind hockey in general, how they can contact you guys, how they can get involved.
Yeah, we've got a website, thedentedpuck.com, at pretty much anywhere, Facebook, social media, The Dented Puck. If you search us, that'll be us. You can always reach out to either of us. We're just Drew or Josh at thedentedpuck.com. And if if you're a player that's in an area, we'll point you in the right direction to get in touch with these teams. And again, I've kind of switched gears. So now we're going to teach you how to skate. And if you want to learn to play hockey, we'll do that as well. But I think that some of the drawbacks that we've seen in the past, people get a little nervous when they're like, we're going to teach you how to play hockey. So I think a lot of programs are leaning more towards the learn to skate. So if that's your interest, if you just want to learn how to skate and then maybe eventually learn how to play hockey, we're there for you too. But, the goal is to get as many visually impaired players on the ice and show them a good time and get them in that team atmosphere. Because I think that that's also something that we kind of lose out on, because every one of us is a little bit of an island out there. And so if we can get everyone together, that's always a good thing.
And we also have a podcast. For those of you listening to this podcast, it started as the Dented Puck podcast, and we actually just dropped our season 9 opener on Friday. So we're on Spotify. Like this episode, we are everywhere this episode is. And you can search the Dented Puck. Very similar kind of to this podcast, talk a little bit about our stories. A little more obviously hockey centric. But please, if you have any questions, any information, if you played and you lost your vision and you're in an area that doesn't have hockey, our national events are very inclusive to the level that you're at and the level that you're going to. And if you're not in the level that you're comfortable at, we can easily find a place for you. So if you feel like I'm not going to go to an event because I haven't played in a decade, that doesn't mean anything. We can find the level that you're comfortable at, and if that doesn't work, we can easily find one that works.
Awesome. Very well said. All right, so again, we've been visiting with Drew Garza and Josh Schneider here on Eyes Free Sports, and just wanted to thank both of you guys so much for joining us here. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and just thank both of you guys for everything that you're doing out there in terms of blind sports and blind hockey specifically.
Thank you for having us. This was a blast, and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you and Drew need to work together. I need to be going down to Florida in the winter, not July 4th. That was absurd. You know what's funnier? I don't know if either of you ever been to New Orleans, but the humidity in Orlando is nothing compared to New Orleans.
You're right. I have been. Yep. It's you wouldn't think, but
it is a whole other level. But the
Absolutely.
Food, I will lead food tours in New Orleans. That's what my wife and I did for two times there. But yeah, it was awesome meeting you, man. Thank you so much for having us on.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks again. To hear more episodes of the Eyes Free Sports podcast and to subscribe, search for Eyes Free Sports on your favorite podcast platform or visit eyesfreesports.com. Be sure to follow the Eyes Free Sports podcast at facebook.com/eyesfreesports and on Twitter at Eyes Free Sports.